Here's a mimer from Shabbos Parshas Truma, but it's a mimer that the Rebbe said on about Kisisa, because it was Parshas Shkolim when they read Kisisa. It says Kisisa is Rosh Bnei Yisrael, that when you will count the heads of the Bnei Yisrael, Lipkudeim, to their numbers, Nosno, each Kaifer Nafshi, each one should give the atonement of their soul. In other words, the Machzis HaShekel they give is an atonement. In Machikosu, Kisisa, since it says that you will count, Beloshen Noichach, it says it first of all, it says it in second person. In other words, Hashem is addressing someone, Beloshen Yochid, and it's in the singular. So he's talking to someone saying in the singular, when you, a single person, will count the Bnei Yisrael. So who is the you singular that Hashem is addressing? Simply put, the simple sense of this pasuk is that's referring to Moshe. That only through Moshe has to be the idea of the counting. But we need to understand the reason for this. Why Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that needs to do the counting. Especially the very fact that the pasuk emphasizes the command that when you will count, he says it specifically to Moshe. So the fact that the Torah has to point out that it's to Moshe, muchaf, that itself is proof. That there is a possibility, there's a reason to think that this could have been done by someone else. Therefore, if there's a reason to think that it could have been done by someone else, and still in all, despite that, it's not being done by someone else, so that itself needs explanation. Why is that the case? So therefore, we need to understand what's the reason that this has to be done specifically through Moshe. Also, when you understand what it says, when you will count the heads of the Bnei Yisrael, could have just said when you will count the Bnei Yisrael. Then also the meaning of the pasuk would be from the word receiving. Rashi explains that kisisas from the word receiving a number. So it doesn't have to be by pointing out that the head, you could receive the numbers even if you don't use the word head. The kabel schum and yonam ladas kamahem, to receive the amount of their number, to know how many they are. Kipirish Rashi, like Rashi explains, how the word kisisa has to do with count. Gamma pirush, the tisam lashon harama, also the meaning that tisas from the word raising up, that you are raising up Klal Yisrael. So, what's the idea of raising up Klal Yisrael? That needs to emphasize the word of raising the head. Ma'adiuk kisisas roish doctor. Why does it have to say that when you will count or raise up the head specifically? Gamsar will have another question. Ma'adiuk she'in in the tisas roish bnei Yisrael. Na'asai de nesinas machsa shekel doctor. Why is it the exact way how you are counting or raising up the head of an Yisrael that's accomplished specifically through giving a half a shekel? Especially namar esrim geira shekel. Later on, the pasuk says that a shekel is 20 geira. Became loy namar shetzar plita nesem geira. Still more doesn't say it. You have to give 10 geira. Elamachza shekel doctor. Specifically, you have to give a half a shekel. So if so, since it's anyway, the pasuk tells you about 20, and from that we could derive a half a shekel is 10. So why is the emphasis on a half a shekel? Why isn't the emphasis on just giving 10 geira? Obviously, there must be some idea about emphasizing the half a shekel. This will be understood by first prefacing the idea of the half a shekel, that it affects the atonement for his soul, like the pasuk says, or pasuk says kaifer nafshi. Sorry, in the Zem move on from this understood. Since it's supposed to atone for the person's soul, it's understood through inyan klali. It's a very general thing to be able to bring about atonement. It's not just okay. There's another mitzvah among the 613 mitzvahs. This is a major thing. Moving gamba pashtus, like it's also understood in the simple sense from the purpose what we were collecting the half a shekel for. The giving of the half a shekel was to purchase the communal karbanis of every single year. They used to collect once a year a half a shekel, and for that they would have the funds to be able to buy all the communal sacrifices. So when you it's a very general thing again. It's an all-encompassing type of thing. It includes all the karbanis of the entire year. Both the carbon tummy that was brought daily in the evening and in the morning, and also and also the additional carbonas that were brought in special days of the year. There's special carbonas for Ish Chodesh, special carbonas brought on Yom Tovim, etc., etc. So any communal offerings was all brought from the Machzis HaShekel. So now the question: so what in a person's life is similar to the Machzis HaShekel? That's a very general and all-encompassing type of thing. And the service of a person to Hashem, it's the idea of belief in Hashem. It's a general idea that's beyond division. It encompasses all matters of the person. When the general idea of belief is the way it's supposed to be, so then this influences and affects all the specific powers of the person. That in general, these are the 10 soul powers. Just like all matters are divided into 10 levels, the 10 commandments, and the 10 utterances, which the world was created. Because the general idea of division into numbers is 10 is a very general, all-encompassing number. Similar to the 10 spheres. Let's skip over to the next actually let's read this over here, the last line. Sorry about that. So he says, let's skip the parentheses. More specifically, yes, spheres, base, beginners, and the 10 spheres, there are 2 levels. He's not really going to explain this. Just take it for, just accept what he's talking about. There's spheres, malmata spheres, malmaila. There's 10 spheres going from above to below. You count chachma, bina, das, and so on. And then that's from below to above. I'm sorry, you count upwards from Malchus, Yisoid, Hoid, Netzach, and so on. Best spheres from Mailamat, and there's 10 spheres going from above to below, Chachma, Bina, Das, so on. Despite the fact that there's 10 spheres going in both directions, Yeshrak Esa spheres. There's in sum total only 10 spheres, Veloy Esrim spheres, and not 20 spheres. How come? Because these Malmaila Lamata, Lamata Lamaila, Kibim Shabez Abchinas and Ba'isa spheres. Because both these levels are the same spheres, like we said, the same Chachma, Bina, Das, and so on, except you look at it from above to below or below to above. And this itself, there are 2 approaches. From below to above and above to below. Now he brings us back to the idea that the shekel is made up of 20 gera. Zel gamma in the esrim gera shekel. That's the idea that the shekel has 20 gera. Since specifically, and when you get into specifics, there's 2 levels in the 10 spheres. Still in all, one has to give only 10 gera. Even since there are only 10 spheres, so that's why, what do we have to give? From the 20 Gera, we only give 10. What does this mean? Back to our avodah. We were talking about the machzah shekels, the idea of the emunah. The 10, which is emunah, is an all-encompassing thing. The 10 goes on the 10 soul powers. It says, the general idea behind this is person needs to draw down the idea of emunah in all the 10 soul powers, because sometimes a person could have belief and faith in Hashem, but it doesn't impact their inner being, who they are and how they act, as we'll explain soon. By days that when a person takes the machzis Hashem, the idea of the emunah, brings it into the Eser Geda, it should permeate the 10 soul powers. Nasa in the Kaifer Nafshi becomes the idea of the atonement of the soul, Lashon Kapara. Before Begeres HaTshuva, like to explain the Geres HaTshuva, the meaning of the word Kapara is Lashon Kinuach, wiping something clean. And he brings an example of Lashon HaGemara, K'may Boil Puri Yad Ba'u Gabri, that somebody said that Hashem was using someone to like clean his hands from a certain problem. So we use the word Kippuri, means cleaning and wiping. We should assign because of L'chabra, not just say, like the pasuk concludes, to clean your souls, to atone your souls. Until the ultimate level of kapar. Let's skip to Eisgim. So now he's going to explain what is it about the emunah that one needs to bring it down into the 10 soul powers. The explanation of this matter is the Benegel, that's a minyan emunah, concerning the essence of the matter of belief. There's no real type of work and service and toil that a yid has to do. Because the emunah is set by every single yid by the nature from his birth. Because yidden are believers, children of believers. In other words, it's inherent. This is an inheritance that's found by every single yid from Avraham Avinu, that the Chazal say on the pasuk, Rosh Amona. What does that mean? That he's the first of the believers of Avraham Avinu. Like it says, V'hemin b'Hashem v'echrivel that Avraham Avinu believed in Hashem, and Hashem considered it a righteousness, a good deed that he did. Tzad, because Avraham Avinu had this level of emunah, whatever the nature of every Jew, that he wants to fulfill all the mitzvahs, like the Rambam writes. But so it shouldn't be bread of shame. In other words, by not earning something, not doing something, having it for free, that's called bread of shame. A person's embarrassed. They don't want to give, they want to earn it. So the way Hashem set the emunah in our souls is in such a way that it's not connected to the individual soul power. So I could have belief, and yet I'm not going to necessarily run my life by the belief. Famous example is what the Gemara says, like a thief, the mouth entering into his tunnel, digging under a house to steal. Rahmana Karya, he calls out to Hashem, he davens that Hashem should assist him in his robbery. Though he believes in Hashem, Rahmana Karya, like it's understood from the fact that he calls out to Hashem and he's davening for Hashem to give him success in his robbery. Still, in all, his belief does not influence him, does not affect him on his power of action that he should that should hold him back from stealing. He is using his belief and faith to do the opposite of Hashem's will. He davens that they shouldn't catch him. And he's davening that he should be successful in his robbery. Therefore, that is the problem the way Hashem set Emunah into us, that Emunah is something divorced from our internal power. So is ha'avoida the re'ei Emunah, therefore it has to be the avoida. That the pasuk says that you take the Emunah out to pasture, lirois Emunah, to feed the belief. My miratzayin, just like someone taking sheep out, a flock of sheep to feed. Yes, kvar metzias atzayin. This means that the sheep exist already. Al tzarich lechazto lefarnas. You need to strengthen the sheep, and you need to sustain the sheep. So the same thing when we talk about re'ei emunah, taking your emunah out to pasture. Maikin tzarich lechazik lefarnas emunah shtiya k'deboy. So too, a person needs to strengthen and to sustain the belief that it should be in the appropriate manner, until it also influences and affects their inner powers, that the person should act in accordance with the emunah that they have. Brought him to be able to connect the belief with the specific soul powers. Yes, there's a type of way that this occurs through understanding and comprehension. Kind of this means from the Rama, he thinks into the fact that this God that he believes in is not like he's raised up higher, Rama, the way the Goyim say he's somewhere up there, up in the heavens. Ella, rather, he thinks into the fact that Hashem that he believes in, Nimtza Kalmamat, is found down here below. And Hashem is down here below in such a way that he's connected with an individual matter, an individual activity. As he sees about himself, that he's davening for Hashem concerning a certain detail. Some people say God is too big to be involved in the details of our lives. But we see that the person is davening, he is davening for the details. He was davening, this robber was davening, that Hashem should make him successful in his thievery. The key since he believes that Hashem can help him in the details, meaning Hashem is not removed and aloof and somewhere up there. Therefore, he davens to Hashem that he should be successful in his thievery. So in the same way, he could daven to Hashem that he should sustain him, and he give him parnos in some other manner. Then he won't find it necessary to rob. We're not talking about wicked people. The reason why he is robbing, he's robbing because he needs to support himself. Like it says, they will not shame a thief when he robs to satisfy his soul because he's hungry. They understand him. They realize where he's coming from. So therefore, we're not talking about someone that made thievery into profession, that he wants to be a thief, he's choosing to be a thief, but he feels this is the only way that he can support himself. So he has to take a moment and think to himself, since I believe that Hashem could intervene in my personal life, and that's why I'm davening to Hashem, that he should help me with my robbery, since he believes in Hashem, so instead of robbing, he could act according to Hashem's wishes. That Hashem should give him his sustenance, his needs. This meditation is understood even in the intellect of the intellectual soul. The Chassidus speaks about that between the godly soul and the animal soul, there's like an objective intellectual soul that's neither godly nor is it animalistic. So even this neutral nefesh hasichlis could relate to this. You don't need to have a big Jewish feeling to be able to relate to the logic that if you're davening for Hashem to help you out in robbery, why aren't you better davening to Hashem to help you out with a parnas? And the truth is, it's even understood in the intellect of the animal soul. So that is one level, and like a basic introductory level of Re'ei Emunah, of creating and feeding the belief that it's of a better quality belief that permeates his 10 soul powers, not just the way he inherited it, not just the way it's inherent in him. Now he introduces a higher level of feeding the belief and strengthening it. But there's also a higher level. For this it says, you will raise up the head, meaning the head is the intellect. So you're not just having the belief on the level of the head, but you're raising it up. This means even after the belief comes in the state of understanding and comprehension, it's still insufficient. It has to be the idea of raising the head, that it has to be the raising up and the comprehension in which we drew down the belief that we said he brought his belief into his comprehension. To elevate it to the level of belief the way it's from Moshe Rabbeinu's perspective. We were asking before, why does it have to be Moshe Rabbeinu? Because that's why it was said, the command to Moshe Rabbeinu, that when you will raise the head, because Moshe Rabbeinu is known as Raya Mehem. Simple translation of Raya Mehemna means the faithful shepherd. But Chassidus explains Raya Mehemna means the shepherd of faith. He gives us and he strengthens our faith. He is the one that takes us out to graze and to pasture, and he sustains and feeds this belief to become to a higher level. But he didn't explain, so what's the higher level of belief? First, we spoke about the basic level of belief that he's not going to go ahead and daven to Hashem to help him out in a robbery. Okay, that's a logical belief. What's a higher level of belief? Raised up the head to a level of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says in Oizdala, the close Abir was a general explanation. This is the Indian Yisrael, they are minim. The fact that we said that Yidden are believers, children are believers. Like we said before, that's a result of the inheritance came about from Avram to his descendants following him, that because he was a believer, he influenced and impacted and brought into the neshamas of every Yid this innate, inherent belief. Well, the Mailam is there, and higher than the Amunah of Avram Avinu, it's the belief, the way it comes from the perspective of Moshe. What is Moshe about? Moshe is about Torah. Moshe Kosov, like it says, Zichru Torah's Moshe Avdi. Remember the Torah of Moshe, my servant. Nikras al Shmoi, the Torah is called by Moshe's name. Because he gave his life for it. The emunah that Moshe Rabbeinu gives to the Yidden, strengthens in the Yidden, is the emunah that has to do, and from the perspective of Torah. That is its advantage over the belief that's inherited from the forefathers. It's a belief like prior to Matan Torah. And he's going to explain the difference, the classic difference between what were things like before the giving of the Torah versus what were things like after the giving of the Torah. And that will also help us understand the difference between the belief that we inherited from Avraham Avinu versus Moshe, who represents the Torah, the belief that Moshe Rabbeinu imparts to us. The idea behind this is though even before Matan Torah, there was the idea of Torah. Torah existed then. It says that Abraham Avinu sat and learned Torah. Yaakov, Yitzchak, they all learned Torah. Torah Torah, the way the others studied Torah, the way the forefathers studied Torah, that's not the Torah the way it is as a result of the giving of the Torah. Before the giving of the Torah, there was a decree that those above will not descend below, and those below will not ascend above, meaning there could be no meshing and joining between the spiritual and the physical. The spiritual and the physical remained apart from each other. So even though the others learned Torah, they couldn't bring the spirituality and godliness into this physical world. As opposed to at the time of the giving of the Torah. Through Moshe, the decree that separated the two was removed. Beginning from the descent of those above down here below, like it says, Parshas Yisro vayeled Hashem al Har Sinai. Hashem descended on Har Sinai. That's the first breaking of that border that God came down here. In other words, indicating and bringing about the godliness could permeate this world. So, that's the novelty from the perspective of the giving of the Torah. All the different types of service that the forefathers did in Kichol Shagadam Allahsam, as great as whatever the Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov did, Igiu Rak L'Shoyrish HaNevroim. It says that in the spiritual levels, they only reach those levels of godliness from which created beings emanated from. That level of godliness that relates to creation. The move on, this is understood. Since it's the level of godliness that relates to creation, so from this it's understood that they were in a way that's measured and bounded and limited, because the level of godliness that deals with the world, since the world is limited, so that level of godliness had to limit itself and be a constricted level of godliness, had to come after the tzimtzum. So in short, the others could only attain a connection with the limited manifestation of godliness and spirituality. As opposed to from the perspective of the giving of the Torah, so all matters come in a way, in other words, all spiritual matters now become in a way that's totally beyond measure and boundary. The Rambam writes a very important point. He says that when we fulfill the mitzvah of milah, or let's say we fulfill the mitzvah of not eating from the sciatic nerve, the gidanosh, even though we see a mitzvah of recorded before the giving of the Torah, but we do not do so because Avraham Avinu did it, or because Yaakov Avinu had that custom not to eat. But rather because Hashem commanded us through Moshe Rabbeinu that we should be circumcised, because only through Hashem's command through Moshe Rabbeinu can you have that joining of the spiritual and the physical, because prior to then there wasn't that joining of the two. That's the idea of fulfillment of mitzvahs, because of a level that's not a limited level, which is where the others reach to, but a level beyond measure, beyond boundary. And concerning Torah, what level of Torah study do we attain now, as opposed to before the giving of the Torah, the way Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov studied Torah? Not only the level of Torah, that Chazal say that which fell down, like something falls from a tree without being picked, what fell down from the Chacham of above, that is the Torah. So there's a level of Torah which is considered it fell down from the Chacham of above, but rather through Moshe Rabbeinu we get connected to a higher level of Torah. Rather, we connect at a level how Torah and Hashem are entirely one. That is the difference between the Torah before the giving of the Torah, the way it was by the Avos, and Moshe Rabbeinu. In a similar fashion, based on all of this, we're now going to be able to explain the difference between the Amunah, the belief that we have as an inheritance from Avraham Avinu, because he was the first of the believers, and therefore we inherit the Amunah from him, versus the belief from the perspective and from the help of Moshe Rabbeinu being the one that feeds us and takes us out to graze and sustains us with him and strengthens our Amunah. This is also the difference between the belief that's a result of Avraham Avinu to the belief that's a result of Moshe. The belief from the level of Avraham, that's the level that permeates the world. Which means, again, it's a level that's limited. And even the level that transcends and encompasses the world, even that belief is a level that has to do still with the worlds. That's why it's called Soiviv Kalam. It encompasses the world. In other words, the world occupies some space over there in that level. And that's like the highest level of belief that a person is able to attain from the very fact that he's a descendant of Avraham Avinu. As opposed to the belief that's thanks to and out of the perspective of Moshe Rabbeinu. It's a level of I am Havaya, your God. So we know I is totally beyond everything. It doesn't even have a name. Then Havaya, that's Soivev, and Alkecha, that's Ramalish, it's completely beyond the world. This means the belief, it does not just state that the entire existence of the world is only because of the godly life force that brings into existence and makes the world exist constantly. Like the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov on the Pasuk that Hashem, your word, is constantly standing in the heavens. What does that mean? That there's heavens that Hashem is sustaining. That means there is an existence of worlds. But why is there the existence of the world? That's thanks to godliness. This belief is in the godliness of the world. The godliness that pertains to the worlds, that relates to the worlds, that brings the worlds into being. But that is not what Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing to the picture. Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing to the picture something higher. The belief is in the level of godliness that's beyond the world. In comparison to this level of godliness beyond the worlds, even the source of life is only something with you. It says with you is the source of life. So Chassidus asks, why does it say with you is the source of life? Hashem is the source of life. It should say you, Atam Makar Chaim. Why does it say with you is the source of life? With you comes to tell you that that the source of life for all the worlds is something that's ancillary and sublimated to Hashem himself. Why is that so? Because all that is responsible for the world's existence is only a ray of Hashem. But Hashem's very essence is beyond the worlds whatsoever. Less machshava tvisa beklal, no thought and grasping whatsoever. Even a very high level cannot grasp him. And from that perspective, there's nothing besides him. There's no world that he gives life to. There's only he himself. So this is something that Moshe Rabbeinu gives us. Drawing down this belief in such a way that it sustains, that he feeds it. The idea of Moshe is through Moshe. Yonishal Moshe Torah canal. Because the idea of Moshe is, like we said before, it's Torah. The level of Torah, the way it's joined with his essence, that's beyond the whole category of worlds. Because that, like we said, the Torah and Hashem are entirely one. And since Hashem is beyond the world, so when we connect to that level of Torah, the way it's connected with Hashem's essence that we spoke about before, that's the difference between the Torah that the forefathers learned versus the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu. So then you appreciate Hashem the way he's completely beyond the world. And and this belief is what Moshe Rabbeinu draws down into the Yidden. Because the Yidden through the Torah become one with Hashem. I say, that's what it means when you will raise the heads of the Bnei Yisrael. Though there's already the belief because of their inheriting the belief from the forefathers, the way it also comes down into comprehension. That's what we said before. There's the head of the Bnei Yisrael. So there has to be, you will raise. Avram of Agbos, Reish Bnei Yisrael, you have to raise and lift up the head of the Bnei Yisrael. That the belief should be in a much higher level. Kanal Baruch, like we explained earlier at length. By days through this boy Macharkach L'Shleimus the L'Asid Lavi, we come to the perfection of the time to come, Mashiach's times, the Vur B'Drusha V'Yadaita, like it's explained in my Marim that speak about V'Yadaita, you should know Hashem your God, Acham Adrushin, should look at the Torah beginning from the Marim, the Torah that begins with the word V'Yadaita. That matters that at present we can only rely on belief because it's beyond our comprehension. When Mashiach comes, those matters will be in a way that we will know them logically and intellectually and rationally. Because, like it says, Molor, it's day of Savaya Kamaim, the earth will be filled with the knowledge of Hashem, like the waters cover the sea. But the Rebbe says this idea hints at a very high level in godliness. So the level of the sea, Alma de Iskasia, the sea indicates the concealed worlds, just like the sea conceals everything in it. The same thing, there's the level of godliness that is concealed, like the sea conceals every being that's in it. So it'll be that even the level of the concealed level of a godliness, which is not possible now to comprehend, it's only something that we take and believe, will be in a level of knowledge. We drew, like it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, he's called Moshe because he was drawn from the water. He came from that level of Alma Diskasia, that level of the concealed and covered level of godliness. But when Mashiach comes, it will be Deya. It will be in a way of knowledge. So what happens with belief? Well, Hashem is infinite. So there's always higher levels. So as much as we understand, there's always higher levels to believe in. So the belief will be in a higher level than what we need the belief for now. The level is totally beyond the category of the world. The level that the Torah and Hashem are entirely one, completely above and beyond that.